Audio Jungle.
Man Lee's face dropped as if he had thought of something. He picked up the sports shoes and ran out. He rushed down the stairs. Everyone followed. Fatty and Jiang Cheng stayed at the back of the room. When they passed the boys' bedroom, Fatty was dragged into it by Jiang Cheng. "What are you doing?" Fatty covered his body in fear. "I want to inspect something." "Why did you bring me with you then?" Jiang Cheng opened all the drawers in the room. Then, he knelt down beside the bed and pulled out a pair of slippers from under the bed. He looked up at Fatty and said, "Because I'll be scared if I'm alone." Fatty. After that, Jiang Cheng and Fatty returned to the living room. The group was gathered around the shoe closet. All the shoes had been taken out and arranged neatly on the floor. Hearing their footsteps down the stairs, Man Lee put down the pair of female casual shoes he was holding. Fatty noticed that everyone didn't look that great. Just as Chen Xiaoming was about to say something, Jiang Cheng cut in. "Did you figure out there are not only 2 boys, but also 2 girls in this bungalow?" Man Lee's pupils trembled. He was about to say something, but he held himself. After some time, he asked darkly, "Newbie, who are you? Don't waste time on these things. Tell us what you have found." Jiang Cheng put down the things and looked at him calmly. Manly showed Jiang Cheng the 2 pairs of shoes. They were both female casual shoes. They were the same sizes, which was why they believed that both shoes belonged to the same woman. Manly turned the shoes over. This pair on the left has severe wear on the outer left, while this pair on the right has its wear focused in the middle. He looked up and into Jiang Cheng's eyes. Shoe wear is related to one's gait, and this habit can't be corrected overnight. Therefore, these have to belong to 2 girls. There were 2 girls here, but why is there only 1 girl's bedroom on the 2nd floor? Chen Xiaoming asked, "And that bedroom only has a single bed." Jiang Cheng shook his head. The smaller bedrooms were both girls' bedrooms, so naturally they each have 1 bed. "What do you mean?" "I found this in the bedroom with all the military posters." Jiang Cheng took out the slippers he found under the bed. "The size is rather small. You can compare it to the casual shoes." Man Lee accepted the slippers and placed them beside the casual shoes. Everyone could see clearly that these 2 pairs belonged to the same person. But isn't it a stretch to say that room belongs to a girl based on a pair of slippers? Perhaps the girl accidentally left her slippers there. Plus, based on the room decoration, it should be a boy who lived there. But a boy wouldn't use these. Jiang Cheng took out a bag from his pocket and handed it to Chen Xiaoming. The girl lifted her brow once she saw the content. It was a pack of women's sanitary pad. "I found that in the bedroom drawer. There's more than one," Jiang Cheng explained. Sister Nguyen looked at Jiang Cheng. "So both of the bedrooms upstairs belonged to girls, and one of them was more tomboyish?" Jiang Cheng nodded. Chen Xiaoming's eyes were unfocused. "Then, where did the 2 boys stay?" "We only found 3 bedrooms in this bungalow. Main bedroom and the 2 smaller bedrooms." "Could it be on the 3rd floor?" Fatty whispered, "We haven't been there." Sister Nguyen shook her head. "That shouldn't be. I looked around when we arrived. This bungalow only has windows on the 1st and 2nd floors. It should be an attic on the 3rd floor. Normally, no one would design a bedroom in a windowless room, especially considering how rich the owner of this bungalow was." Chen Xiaoming seemed to realize something, and she said nervously, "So those 2 boys were not part of this family. They were visitors." Manly glanced at her and corrected her, "More like intruders." Jiang Cheng also added, "And they were not boys, but 2 adult men." Chen Xiaoming shivered. Indeed, after the hypothesis was overruled, based on the 2 pairs of sports shoes that were left behind, one of them was closer in size to Jiang Cheng, and the other was bigger than Manly. Jiang Cheng looked at the 2 pairs of sports shoes on the ground. "When I first saw them, I was confused. They were so cheap and old. They were clearly different from the other shoes in the shoe closet. The people living here didn't seem like people who'd buy cheap shoes. Silence reigned in the living room. The story turned from a family tragedy to a home invasion. Then, Fatty looked left and right and announced softly, "So, 2 guys trespassed into this bungalow, killed the father and mother, imprisoned their 2 daughters, and then killed them? Do you remember the water trail left behind by the ghost? There's also a lot of long hair in the first floor bathroom." Sister Nguyen said, "That means the ghost probably died from drowning. He was frightened to death and then tortured. This would explain why the ghost would put the sports shoes on him. The ghost treated Xiaoyu as one of the men who tortured and killed her." After they finished their analysis, it was already dawn. No one urged Fatty to cook. They ate some simple food, like bread. It was not that they felt sorry for Fatty, but they didn't have much time left. Jiang Cheng noticed that days were getting shorter in this world. Based on his calculations, after 2 more nights, the sun would never rise in this world again. What would happen after the day fully disappears? Fatty asked with his widened eyes. Jiang Cheng turned around and patted Fatty in consolation. "Don't worry." Fatty's pale face reddened slightly. Jiang Cheng finished. "At most, the ghosts will start killing indiscriminately." Fatty. The group walked down the 2nd floor corridor. They wanted to do a second search of the bungalow while there was still daylight. With the elementary analysis out of the way, their search was more targeted. Fatty stuck close to Jiang Cheng. Manly grumbled that his big size was blocking people's view and scolded him several times. Fatty ignored him and the others couldn't do much to him. Soon, they found something in the main bedroom. There was a solid wood picture frame hanging on the wall. There was an old picture in the frame. The picture had been soaked, and the background had yellowed. Only the family of 4 in the center of the picture could be seen. The male and female owners stood in the middle. The mother had her hands on the shoulders of a girl with 2 pigtails. The girl stood obediently before her mother. The other, taller girl looked more rebellious. Her pants and sleeves were rolled up. Her thin arms were covered with tattoos. She stood beside the father and lifted her chin in defiance. It looked like this was the family that once lived here. The strange thing was all of their faces were blurred out, and so was the background. It was impossible to tell where the picture was taken. Chen Xiaoming was stunned when she saw the picture, and then she said excitedly, "I remember this picture wasn't there in the morning. This whole wall was unadorned in the morning." Sister Nguyen was calmer. She was used to strange things happening in the dream realm. "We probably found the right clues and triggered the progression of the plot," Manly explained. Jiang Cheng looked at him, "Kinda like a game?" "I suppose so." Then, they found a pair of pliers in the room where Xiaoyu's body was found. Beside the pliers was a squashed round tin box. It was the kind used to store candies. Fatty picked up the box and shook it. It made a rattling sound. "What is it?" Just as he wanted to use his large hands to twist the box open, Jiang Cheng held him back. Jiang Cheng grabbed him and stared at the pliers. His expression shifted. "What's wrong?" Fatty was scared. Jiang Cheng's expression slowly returned to normal and said, "Nothing. I suddenly remembered there might be more clues in the bedrooms, so I'll go there for now." "Oh. Okay." Fatty nodded. He wanted to go with Jiang Cheng, but he was too curious about the contents of the box. 3 seconds after Jiang Cheng left, Fatty finally opened the box. His eyes turned from curiosity to confusion and finally fear. When Jiang Cheng returned with his hands over his ears, Fatty had stopped making any sound. Manly covered Fatty's mouth and tossed the shivering man to the side with annoyance. Jiang Cheng poked his head over and saw the box lying on the ground. A few milky white buttons were scattered around the box. "I knew there would be teeth." Jiang Cheng nodded with satisfaction. Manly and Sister Nguyen apparently had the same guesses because they didn't show much shock. However, Chen Xiaoming's face paled. Even her teeth chattered. "Men are all pigs," Sister Nguyen said coolly, "bunch of animals." Jiang Cheng heard that and looked at Manly. Manly was startled and then groused, Why are you looking at me for? Jiang Cheng shrugged and turned to the fatty at the corner. He met the latter's accusing gaze. Jiang Cheng scratched his head and turned away in embarrassment. There were no more clues. Jiang Cheng suggested they check behind the door on the 3rd floor. Manly stopped him and pointed out the window. It was almost dark. Exploring a new area in the dark was not a good idea. Therefore, everyone decided to stop the search and went to rest. Fatty thought that everyone would sleep together, considering the incident that happened the night before. However, Sister Nguyen had no such idea. She even kicked Manly out and slammed the door. Manly stood before the main bedroom door with his blanket and pillow like an abandoned husband. "It's all right, brother." Fatty consoled him. "You can sleep with us." "That won't be necessary. I'll sleep downstairs." Then, Manly carried his stuff and went downstairs. His footsteps echoed along the steps. Jiang Cheng turned back to the bedroom. Fatty thought about it and followed Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng switched on all the lights and then leaned on the door to listen to the movements outside. After a while, Jiang Cheng slowly moved away from the door and sat down on the couch. "Brother, are we still sleeping here tonight?" Fatty's face was green as his eyes kept moving to the bed. "The ghost came from under that bed yesterday night." "Of course not. I'm going to the study later," Jiang Cheng admitted. "I'm coming with you." About 10 minutes later, the sky was fully dark. Jiang Cheng glanced at his wristwatch, stood up and sidled to the door to open it. Then, he slipped to the other room, slowly eased the door open and fluttered into it. Fatty followed him. After they closed the door, they found chairs to sit on. Fatty wanted to open the lights, but was stopped by Jiang Cheng. Fatty looked at the scary darkness around them and couldn't help but say, "Can't you let me switch on the lights or else I'll feel like ghosts are everywhere?" Jiang Cheng sighed and compromised. "Fine." Fatty moved around and finally found the switch on the wall. As he was about to press it, Jiang Cheng's voice floated from behind him. "This way, the ghosts will definitely be able to find you." On the bed in the main bedroom, Chen Xiaoming hugged a pillow and sobbed quietly. The ghosts in this mission were scarier than the ones in her last mission. Once she thought of the pliers and the teeth in the box, her body trembled. Sister Nguyen sat on the couch. Her normal arrogance was gone. Chen Xiaoming reminded her of her former self. "All right, stop crying," she said gently. "You should be able to tell that the ghosts here only target men. We'll be safe after chasing Manly away." Chen Xiaoming raised her head to reveal her red eyes. "Doesn't this mean the 3 are in danger?" "Don't be silly. Our main concern is ourselves." Sister Nguyen glanced at the door and her face darkened. Then, she turned around to say after a pause, "Remember, in the dream realm, the thing that is often the most dangerous is not ghosts, but other humans." "Humans?" Chen Xiaoming widened her eyes. "That's right." Sister Nguyen subconsciously closed her hands around her collar and said darkly, "They're scarier than ghosts." The fire in the fireplace crackled. The fire lit up the whole living room. Manly, who was seated before the fireplace, had his face darkened. He knew why Sister Nguyen had kicked him out. The 2 ghosts in the bungalow were murdered by 2 men, so their targets were male. The middle-aged man and were the perfect examples. With that in mind, Manly grabbed 2 new firewood and tossed them into the fireplace. The fire burned harder. So far, the tragedy had been cleared up. In other words, the mission would end soon. However, that meant the ghosts would become more aggressive. Something would happen that night. The question was who would die. It was because of that he rejected Fatty's idea of sleeping together. The chance of him being attacked if he was alone was, if he stayed with the other 2, the chance would be 100%, and being targeted by ghosts' fear crossed his eyes. Ghosts rarely killed more than 1 person at one time, but it didn't mean that it wouldn't happen. Plus, he had his own plan. He had confidence he could survive until morning if he stayed beside the fireplace. Based on current evidence, the ghost died from drowning, and there was a burning flame before him. In the study, Fatty knelt in the dark and didn't dare to breathe. Eventually, he poked his neck closer to where Jiang Cheng was sitting, and he whispered, "Do you think the ghost will know that we're hiding here?" "Don't know." Fatty sighed in relief. "That's good." "I meant I don't know," Jiang Cheng clarified. After spending some time with Jiang Cheng, Fatty was used to being scared. He shivered for less than 5 seconds and could converse normally again. "To be serious, brother," Fatty stared at Jiang Cheng. "I know you're not a normal person. Last night, when the ghost appeared, I was so scared. I didn't know anything, but you still remembered what she wore. You're not a model. You were with the police, right?" Hope appeared on Fatty's face. However, Jiang Cheng glanced at him. "Do you think we'll survive if I'm with the police or show the ghost my badge?" Fatty's hope was drenched again. He said helplessly, "So, we're done for." Jiang Cheng was about to answer when Fatty raised his hand to stop him. "I'm going to guess you'll say I'm the only one who's done for, right?" Jiang Cheng shrugged. "But," he later added, "but there's no need to be so pessimistic. There is still a chance to turn this around." Just as Fatty raised his head to say something, Jiang Cheng hushed him. Fatty immediately shut up. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed, but Fatty still heard nothing. Nothing changed in the study. He was extremely nervous and perked up his ears. Jiang Cheng stood up from his chair and glanced at the study table. Fatty heard him mumble about the lack of action. "Brother," Fatty was so shocked that his voice changed, "are you waiting for the ghost?" "Shush." Jiang Cheng frowned as he headed to the door. "Wait here. I'll go out to take a look." Fatty quickly ran after him. "No, we need to stick together." Jiang Cheng and Fatty came to the corridor. The lights were still on, but they were very dim. Jiang Cheng didn't hesitate and went directly to the main bedroom. He knocked on it lightly. Several seconds later, an alerted female voice said, "Who is it?" "It's me," Jiang Cheng answered. "How shui?" "What are you doing here?" Jiang Cheng said seriously, "I think something has happened to Manly." Hearing this, the door opened up more, but it was only a gap. Sister Nguyen only showed one eye. "How can you tell?" Jiang Cheng looked down the corridor where the stairs were and then added, "It's not safe here. Can we talk inside?" Sister Nguyen looked at Jiang Cheng and Fatty for a while before nodding, "Okay." The door opened. Sister Nguyen stood behind it. They didn't switch on the light either. Once he heard that something might have happened to Manly, Fatty became so nervous. He had no idea how Jiang Cheng came to that conclusion, but he chose to believe him. Jiang Cheng was the first to enter, and Fatty followed him. However, as he was about to enter the room, Jiang Cheng halted. He paused, and that caused Fatty to bump into him. Before Fatty could say anything, Jiang Cheng retreated to the corridor. At the same time, he pulled Fatty away with him. Sister Nguyen had already opened the door for him. "Get in. Why are you wasting time?" She kept glancing down the corridor like something scary would appear there. "I forgot something important in my room," Jiang Cheng suddenly said. "I'll be back after I get it." Before Sister Nguyen could react, Jiang Cheng grabbed Fatty and turned around. They rushed down the corridor. Fatty didn't think Jiang Cheng would be so strong despite his slender frame. He was practically dragged away by Jiang Cheng. His mind was blank. However, he was clever enough not to say anything. They came to the corner of the stairwell and the corner. Jiang Cheng pulled him into hiding. "What did you find out?" Fatty asked between breaths. He saw cold sweat drip down Jiang Cheng's face. Jiang Cheng told him to be quiet as he leaned close to the corridor as if to listen. Several minutes later, his face returned to normal. "Something's wrong with Sister Nguyen," Jiang Cheng whispered. Fatty's face trembled. "What do you mean?" She was wearing a pair of slippers. "Slippers?" "Yes." Jiang Cheng nodded. "I saw them when I entered the door earlier." He continued, "We all know how dangerous this bungalow is. We could be chased at any time. Why would she remove her normal shoes and change into a pair of slippery slippers? This is not a holiday. Fatty thought of something, and he shook. So you mean the sister-in-law we saw is a ghost? I'm afraid so. Jiang Cheng nodded. If that's the case, the girl, Chen Xiaoming. All right. Jiang Cheng interrupted him. Let's go to the living room. To avoid unnecessary misunderstanding, Jiang Cheng didn't hide his footsteps going down the stairs. However, when he and Fatty arrived, there was only the burning fireplace. Manly was gone. Fatty was scared. Do you think something happened to him? Jiang Cheng looked around and said, Come out, we're humans, not ghosts. Then, a giant shadow stood up behind the couch. Manly looked at them with alert. The knife in his hand glowed dangerously. Why did you come down? He glanced at the stairs and then at Jiang Cheng. What about the other two? Something happened to them. Manly stared at them suspiciously. Based on their predictions, women should be safe in this mission. Fatty quickly explained everything to him. Manly's expression changed, and he sighed. In that case, something bad probably happened to them. Fatty wanted to say it was worse than that. They should hope they didn't find them like Xiaoyu. Since ghosts had already attacked that night, it was comparatively safer for the rest. However, after what happened, even Fatty didn't feel sleepy anymore. You should rest, Jiang Cheng said. I won't sleep. I'll wake you 2 hours later. Perhaps Manly was already used to this. He lay down not on the couch, but beside the fireplace. No one knew if he was really sleeping or not. Furthermore, he kept the knife he found in the kitchen close to him. Beside the warm fire, even Fatty started to feel drowsy. He hadn't had a good sleep in a while. Only his determination kept him going. He sat on the couch, and the scene before him blurred. When he opened his eyes again, the sky was brightening. Manly and Jiang Cheng were quietly discussing something. Jiang Cheng looked normal, but Manly looked quite excited. Fatty moved, and the couch creaked. Jiang Cheng turned to look at him. You're up. Fatty rubbed his face with some embarrassment. The sun's up. Should we go up to check? There's no need to hurry. We should wait until the sun is fully up first. Just like that, they waited for another half an hour. During this period, the trio ate some simple stuff like bread to stave off hunger. Then, Jiang Cheng announced that it was almost time. They took their things and headed upstairs. Manly was still holding the knife he had yesterday. Jiang Cheng grabbed a rolling pin. Since there was nothing else left in the kitchen, he held the chopping board before him like a shield. The three slowly approached the main bedroom. By then, they had confirmed that something had happened to Sister Nguyen and the girl. The door of the main bedroom was left half open. It was very quiet. Jiang Cheng reached out to push the door fully open. Fatty raised the chopping board. They were ready to see two dead bodies or ghosts jumping out at them. But once the door opened, there was nothing inside. There were no bodies or blood. There were not even any signs of struggle. The bed was neatly made. Everything was arranged neatly. There was a silk robe left on the couch like the female owner had just left. Where are the people? Fatty asked with wide eyes. Jiang Cheng looked under the bed while Manly checked the closet. Then, they examined the bathroom. Behind the couch, they then searched the other rooms, including the one where Xiaoyu's corpse was found. Nothing. Chen Xiaoming and Sister Nguyen disappeared. Jiang Cheng thought about it and suddenly asked Manly, is there a possibility that they haven't died but have left this place? Do you mean they have completed the mission? Manly's face darkened, but he still answered, it's improbable but not impossible. Fatty cut in, but how does that explain the ghost we encountered last night? Jiang Cheng knew what Fatty wanted to say. Since the ghost took Sister Nguyen's appearance and appeared in Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming's bedroom, it had to mean that the two had been attacked. Before they met the ghost, Jiang Cheng stayed on the second floor. He didn't hear anyone move in the corridor, so Sister Nguyen and the girl didn't leave their room. The windows in the bungalow were locked, so there was no chance of them escaping that way. Either the two had been killed by the ghosts, and their bodies had been hidden away, or the two had already left the dream realm and completed the mission before the ghost arrived. With regards to how to leave the mission, Manitoba Lee shared his experience. Normally, after all the clues had been found, a black iron door would appear. They would return to the real world through that door. However, he stressed that while the door could appear at any location, it wouldn't be at a secluded spot. It would be at a location crucial to the mission. Just like the door we pushed open in our dreams? Jiang Cheng asked. Manly nodded. Yes, you can see it as the path that connects the real world and the dream realm. They returned to the first floor living. Jiang Cheng sat on the thick carpet. Manly and Fatty sat down opposite Jiang Cheng. The situation was a bit complicated. Okay. Jiang Cheng raised his head to say, we'll assume Sister Nguyen and Chen Xiaoming have already escaped this place successfully. We'll need to figure out how they did that. Fatty stuttered and asked, but how come I feel like they've been killed? Jiang Cheng looked at him and said evenly, that's meaningless. If you insist that they've been killed, then all we can do is to wait for death. Fatty was scared by Jiang Cheng's attitude and stopped talking. Manly quickly nodded. You're right. They must have found the way to leave. So it's now our turn. Jiang Cheng patted his pants and stood up. He glanced out the window. The sunlight was blinding, but he knew that based on the previous calculation, the morning would only stay for 3 hours, and half of the 3 hours had already passed. When the night descended again, their world would forever be dropped into the eternal night. We don't have enough time. We have to split up. Jiang Cheng looked around. Manly, you can go alone. Fatty will come with me. We need to move fast and pay attention to things like keys. There might be clues behind that iron door on the 3rd floor. However, I've tried everything. Without the key, we aren't opening that door. Okay. The two teams went to work. Since Jiang Cheng's group had one more person, they would handle the larger 1st floor. Manly searched the 2nd floor. Soon, the search bore results. Jiang Cheng found a piece of rope at an inconspicuous corner behind the staircase. One end of the rope was tied to the corner of the 2nd floor staircase. The other end extended to the 1st floor. Jiang Cheng ran up the stairs to examine the knot. The place was where he and Fatty were hiding yesterday. There was no rope there yesterday. When Manly heard them running up the stairs, he also walked out of the study. What's wrong? Jiang Cheng pointed at the rope. Then, they returned back to the 1st floor and followed the rope. They walked to the end of the living room, and the small room where the wood was stored had its door open. Manly's face dropped. I remember tying a rope between the door handle and the nail beside the door. Where's the rope? Fatty walked into the room and picked up a rope from behind a stack of wood. The rope was snipped into 2 parts, and the cut was clean. Manly took over and touched it. It was cut by a tool like a dagger. There was another door inside the small room. The wood before the door had been moved away. Jiang Cheng walked over and gave it a push. The door didn't budge. He looked through the glass on the door. It led to the back of the bungalow. There were some fallen leaves on the ground. However, due to the earlier rain, the ground was muddy. There were clear tire tracks in the mud. It is left behind by the bus. Fatty gasped. However, they were surrounded by woods. There was no path for a bus. Regardless, that was not important. The important thing was they knew how Sister Nguyen and the girl left. Fatty learned from Jiang Cheng and shook the door heavily. The door didn't want to open. Stop doing that, Jiang Cheng said. You won't be able to open it. Fatty stopped, but he asked, if this door won't open, how do they leave? Manly suddenly answered, it's the time. Time? Yes. Manly looked at the confused Fatty and nodded. We have the wrong timing. The bus and the door will only work when the time is right. 3.7 am, Jiang Cheng said. Manly looked at him in surprise and nodded. You've thought of it too. What are you talking about? Fatty blinked. Why 3.7 am? Do you remember Xiaoyu's time of death? Jiang Cheng said, back then, I looked at the clock. It showed 3.7 am. Fatty was shocked. But isn't time unreliable in this world? Manly continued, correct, but that doesn't mean we cannot use it as a frame of reference. On the night Xiaoyu died, I heard a strange sound, and I also looked at the time. He took the pocket watch from his pocket and shook it before Fatty. It also showed 3.7 am then. However, not too long ago, I just glanced at the time. It showed 6 am. In other words, all the clocks in the room would show 3.7 am at a specific moment. Fatty's pupils trembled. He whipped his head at Jiang Cheng. So yesterday, you were waiting for the time to reach 3.7 am in the study because the ghost would show up then. Jiang Cheng showed no response, but Fatty continued, the ghost didn't show up, so you went to probe Sister Nguyen. When you saw that Sister Nguyen was still alive, you said Manly was. He suddenly stopped because Manly was still standing there. The rest was simple. They returned to the living room. Jiang Cheng sat on the couch. Manly stayed beside the fireplace. Fatty went to cook. After food, they gathered around. Manly said he saw 6 tire threads behind the bungalow. In other words, the bus had been there for the past 3 nights. They had spent 3 nights at the bungalow already. The sky was fully dark. Manly glanced at the watch. Soon, just as Fatty was about to fall asleep, Jiang Cheng suddenly announced, it's time. Manly stood up and put the pocket watch in his pocket. Everyone walked to the storage at the corner of the living room. Jiang Cheng and Manly were very careful. After all, no one could confirm no ghost would show up near the end. Just as they entered the storage, the empty space behind the bungalow lit up. A bus drove over from the distance and then paused about 20 meters away from the bungalow. Manly took a deep breath and then placed his hand on the door handle. He pushed. The door opened. Fatty was so excited, he almost cried. Manly was the first to leave. Then, Fatty. Finally, Jiang Cheng. The bungalow was very warm, so when they first came out, they were shocked by the cold. Manly pulled his coat around his body. Jiang Cheng did the same. Fatty could only hug himself. The 3 slowly moved towards the bus. It was the same people on the bus, the pair of couple, the pair of mother and son. They were all in their seats. Director Zhang stood on the bus and welcomed them with passion. Sorry for the wait, travelers. We're going home now. Home. It was so captivating. Fatty wanted to get on the bus, but someone pulled him from behind. In that opening, Manly walked past him and got on the bus. Fatty turned around and saw Jiang Cheng looking at the bus calmly. What's wrong? Jiang Cheng didn't answer. Travelers, do you not want to go home? Director Zhang smiled and bowed slightly. She exposed the pretty rose tattoo on her slender arm. If you're late, you won't be able to go home. Manly, who was on the bus, finally noticed Jiang Cheng and Fatty didn't follow him. He turned around and looked at them in confusion. However, Fatty was not in the mood to care about him because he realized Director Zhang was glaring at Jiang Cheng. Her eyes turned vicious. A few seconds passed, and since the driver didn't do anything, the bus door slammed closed. The speed was so fast that Fatty was shocked. The bus disappeared, and only 2 deep tire tracks were left. No, no. Fatty was scared by Director Zhang. His body couldn't stop shaking. After comparing this to the incident with Sister Nguyen, he gasped, that was a trap. Director Zhang was a ghost too. Jiang Cheng ignored Fatty. He saw the bus disappear and then whispered, goodbye. Jiang Cheng returned to the bungalow and came to the iron door on the 3rd floor. Fatty wanted to ask Jiang Cheng some questions, but he didn't have the opportunity. Jiang Cheng reached out, and the door opened. Jiang Cheng didn't open it. Instead, an arm from inside opened the lock. It's you. As the door opened, Fatty gasped. Chen Xiaoming still looked pretty innocent. She pulled the door open. Jiang Cheng entered the door. After some hesitations, Fatty followed. As Sister Nguyen said, it was a secret room on the 3rd floor. There was no window. The only light source was 2 white candles the size of a baby's arm. The candlelight showed that the room was large. It was even larger than the main bedroom. A pure black iron door was embedded in the wall. When he saw the iron door, Fatty's heart relaxed. The iron door gave him an indescribable strange feeling. It couldn't be fabricated. I'm curious, how did you know it was a trap? Chen Xiaoming sat on the chair and put her chin on her palm. Her other hand pointed behind the bungalow. She didn't look nervous. If anything, she looked excited. Of course, she was not talking to Fatty but Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng sat down across from her. Even though you decorated everything so truthfully by leaving the rope on the stairs and hiding them inside the storage to create the illusion that you've left through the back door, there were too many questions. For one, why would the ghost disguise itself as Sister Nguyen to appear in the room after you left? Also, your bedroom was neatly arranged and set up. I don't believe the ghosts have the reasons to do that. Chen Xiaoming smiled, but even so, you were still tricked by us to leave the bungalow. You merely didn't get on the bus at the last moment. Jiang Cheng shook his head. That's wrong. Oh? Chen Xiaoming smiled brightly until her eyes were crescents. How am I wrong? She only treated Jiang Cheng as a stubborn man. She hadn't encountered such an interesting person in a long time already. There are 3 points where you are wrong. 1. I wasn't tricked by you to leave the bungalow. I left it voluntarily. Jiang Cheng explained, there are tire tracks on the mud at the back of the bungalow but no footprints. Therefore, you haven't left the bungalow. 2. You are the only one trying to trick us. Sister Nguyen is already dead. He then took out something the size of a button from his pocket. By then, Chen Xiaoming's smile had already disappeared. It was a rectangular button made from tortoiseshell. It was quite rare. I found it in the main bedroom. It still had some broken thread stuck to it. Jiang Cheng said, if I remember correctly, it came from Sister Nguyen's coat. I believe Sister Nguyen was killed before I came to your room. This button flew out when Sister Nguyen struggled with the ghost. After the ghost left, you cleaned up the room. Your purpose was to prevent us from figuring out Sister Nguyen was killed and creating the illusion that you had escaped from the bungalow. Jiang Cheng shut up after that. Chen Xiaoming was silent for a while before asking him, then, what is the 3rd point? The last point, which is also the most important. Jiang Cheng straightened up and looked at the girl. Even Fatty felt nervous. I want to know who gave a girl, who has no looks, no body, no brain, like you the courage to trick me, he asked directly. Fatty was stunned. He knew to expect the unexpected, but even so, he was shocked. Time appeared to pause. Chen Xiaoming's mouth fell open. She couldn't say a word. All right. Jiang Cheng leaned back in his chair and said, now, it's my turn to ask the questions. Go to hell. Chen Xiaoming grabbed the china vase next to her and tossed it over. Jiang Cheng avoided it easily. Her face was red. She looked like she would fight Jiang Cheng to death. Jiang Cheng said calmly, I'd advise you to calm down. This is a locked room, and we're the only 2 people here. If you don't follow my instructions, some bad things might happen. Chen Xiaoming chuckled mirthlessly. Are you threatening me? Fatty licked his lips. Brother, you 2 are not the only people here. I'm here too. Jiang Cheng glanced at Fatty and then added, right, there's also a Fatty here. Think about it. Chen Xiaoming's face paled. Then, she turned around to look at the door. Jiang Cheng's voice started again, don't even think about it. That door is 5 meters from you, and I'm only 3 meters from you. I can easily catch you. Chen Xiaoming laughed from anger. The door will open in less than 10 minutes. I don't think you can do anything to me. Jiang Cheng scratched his chin with interest. So there are 10 minutes later. As he stood up, He revealed a meaningful smile. We don't need that long. 30 seconds will be enough. Fatty's eyes widened. Chen Xiaoming's fists tightened. Eventually, she gritted her teeth and hissed, "What questions do you have? Ask." Jiang Cheng smirked and sat back down. He looked a bit regretful. "How did you open this door?" Chen Xiaoming glared at him and huffed. "After you left yesterday, the ghost that killed Sister Nguyen dragged her body here. I followed it here." In other words, Sister Nguyen's body was still in the bedroom when I was there yesterday. Yes, she was just behind the door. At that point, Chen Xiaoming paused to smile at Jiang Cheng. "If you had taken a few more steps inwards, your body might have ended up here too." Jiang Cheng ignored her and continued asking, "Where is Sister Nguyen's body?" Chen Xiaocheng stood up and headed to the door. Jiang Cheng immediately followed, keeping a meter away from her. "I can't run. The door is not open yet." Chen Xiaoming scoffed. Jiang Cheng followed her and shook her head. "Don't misunderstand me. I just feel much happier when I'm close to you." Chen Xiaoming pouted and ignored him. She walked to the wall and searched for a switch. Then, the room lit up. The light above them came on. At the same time, Fatty's eyes almost jumped out of their sockets. The room was designed like a church. A huge cross hung on the wall. Sister Nguyen was hanged on the cross upside down. It was clear that she was dead. The place was stuffed with various kinds of torture devices. They looked medieval and creepy. Most of them were stained with blood. This was a torture room. The cross represents God, and the inverse cross represents the devil. Jiang Cheng looked at the devices emotionlessly. It looks like this was a family of Satanists. Fatty was shocked by the scene. Chen Xiaoming looked at Jiang Cheng with interest. "Sounds like you've already guessed that already. This kind of preparation couldn't be done in a short amount of time. Therefore, the owners of these torture devices could only be the bungalow owners and not the two poor intruders." When Fatty recovered, he looked at Jiang Cheng. "In other words, the real killers are the family and two men." Jiang Cheng nodded. "Haven't you already met them?" Fatty seemed to realize something, and he stuttered, "It was the bus that ferried us here. The driver, the mother with the kid, the tomboyish female operator, the girl and the couple, they are the family living here." "That's right." Chen Xiaoming shrugged. "The man and the couple and the big boy the mother was taking care of, they were the victims tormented by this family." Fatty thought back to the strange actions of the mother and son, as well as the couple did. For example, the man of the couple always had an eye mask on, and he remained motionless. The boy with his mother looked so scared even though he was with his mother. It was hell on earth. The ghost wasn't back for revenge. She was merely continuing her sins in life. These habits couldn't be changed no matter what. "When did you know the truth?" Jiang Cheng looked at Chen Xiaoming. "After the ghost killed Sister Nguyen, the picture we found on the wall suddenly became clear." She took out a picture. The wooden frame was gone. She probably tossed it away already. Jiang Cheng accepted the picture. It was a portrait of the family. Jiang Cheng remembered every face in the picture. The background was this torture room. In the corner of the picture, there were two men. They were both chained. Since their heads were lowered, their faces couldn't be seen. However, they were dressed similarly to the two men on the bus. The door started to glow weakly, and the whole space trembled. The mission was ending. The door was opening. Why lie to us? How does that benefit you? Jiang Cheng steadied himself and asked one last question. Chen Xiaoming was already used to the door shaking when it was about to open. While Fatty was holding the wall to stop himself from falling, she was already standing before the iron door. The iron door fully opened, and it revealed a world of fog. Jiang Cheng turned to look at Fatty behind him before walking into the fog. After a temporary phase of vertigo, Jiang Cheng's body paused. He stepped on firm ground again. He looked down and saw the wooden floor. Everything became familiar. He took a deep breath. He had returned to his office. The sky outside the window was still dark. A bit of moonlight shone in. It was how he left it. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. It was made of rough material. Through the moonlight, it was revealed to be a folded piece of paper. He slowly opened it, but suddenly his body froze. A hand silently fell on his right shoulder. The person had been waiting for him. Jiang Cheng slowly raised his hands. There are 200,000 inside the hidden compartment in the third drawer of the office table. The drawer is locked. The key is inside the second to last cup in the kitchen. There was no sound. He paused and then continued, I only have so much money. If you want to rob me of something else, I suggest we go upstairs first. There's only a mattress, so I hope you don't mind. The hand that held his shoulder shook, and then a loud voice said, Brother, this is a nice place. Jiang Cheng turned around and grabbed the hand on his shoulder. At the same time, he twisted it behind the person's back and pinned the person's rotund body against the wall. Brother! Brother! Fatty hissed in pain. Jiang Cheng recognized the man and asked chilly, Why are you here? He glanced at the location where the door was. Only a normal wall remained. Based on what Manly said, if one survived the mission, the survivors would return to where they started in the real world or their own homes. But this was clearly not Fatty's home. Fatty's right shoulder almost snapped. He quickly explained, I was thinking about how good it'd be if I could stay with brother when I crossed the door. Then, I ended up here. Probably we are fated. Before Fatty could finish, Jiang Cheng cut him off. Stop joking. You just wanted me to bring me across the nightmare barrier. Going into the nightmare was not an isolated incident. Fatty knew that too. He only survived the mission because he stuck with Jiang Cheng. He might not be as lucky next time. Fatty looked awkward after he was exposed. Jiang Cheng searched his body and found nothing special. He let Fatty go and switched on the light above them. Fatty leaned against the wall. As he rubbed his arm, he studied Jiang Cheng's office. Brother, Fatty saw the patient's records on the table and asked Jiang Cheng, Are you a doctor? Yes. In what field? Jiang Cheng walked to the office table and sat down, the field of resentment. Fatty bubbled his saliva like he wanted to say something, but he still shut up in the end. Based on Jiang Cheng's requirement, he sat down across from him. The couch was old. The leather was cracked. The back could be pushed down easily to turn the couch into a bed. Sometimes, Jiang Cheng would direct his patients to lie there and help them relax. After some questions, Fatty revealed that his name was Wang Fugue. He had done many jobs, the most recent job being the driver of a long-distance transportation truck. Due to some reasons, he quit. His house was in the Swan City, not far away from the Banyan City. Fatty said it was his first time entering the nightmare world. Jiang Cheng asked why he was so neatly dressed and knew to carry an umbrella with him. That was not how a normal person would dress when they went to bed. Fatty scratched his head and admitted that he got into a big fight due to a recent salary issue with his boss. Then, he was chased out of the employee hostel. He had no money for a hotel stay, so he decided to sleep overnight in a small garden, but Jiang Cheng knew that Fatty wanted to say he also had no idea why he would suddenly appear at that place. Did you cross through a door too? Yes. Fatty nodded as his face paled. The door appeared on the wall of the garden, but I remembered there was not a door there. It was similar to Jiang Cheng's experience. Everyone came to the dream realm through a door that didn't exist, but the difference was the location of the doors. Jiang Cheng glanced at the time. It was dawn. He turned to Fatty and said officiously, You can stay here until morning, but after that, you have to leave. Fatty looked at Jiang Cheng with puppy eyes. Jiang Cheng didn't change his mind. He ignored Fatty after that. He sat down and took out the folded piece of paper from his pocket. He spread it out on the table. Fatty stretched his neck to look. In the end, he ran over to the other side of the table to see clearly. It was an article from a newspaper. The paper was yellow. Most of it was blurry. Jiang Cheng turned it around and saw a clear printed line. The case of the torture mansion has been solved. The family of devils fell into the lake and died. It contained details about the case. The family was a group of Satanists. The father pretended to be a tour bus driver and tricked many innocent passengers into his home in the forest. One of the daughters pretended to be a tour guide, while the other daughter fished for victims on the internet. The mother controlled the big picture. They trapped and tortured the victims at the bungalow. In just a month, the local police had received many reports of missing people. One of them was a pair of twins. Eventually, the police followed the trail of the missing people and found the hidden bungalow in the forest. However, the family managed to escape and carried with them 3 victims. Late at night, they drove the bus and escaped through a narrow, small path. Due to days of storm, part of the path had been washed away. The bus skidded off the road and fell into the river by the roadside. When they were found, the family of 4 and 3 victims had already drowned. This would appear to be the truth of the nightmare mission. However, there was more than that caught Jiang Cheng's attention. The article featured a picture of one of the victims. It should be released by the police. The picture mentioned that this victim couldn't be identified. The police hoped that anyone who had any clues would contact the police. From the picture, the victim was tall and muscular. The face had been blurred off. He wore a black collar. The picture also showed a few of his effects. Fatty's eyes moved down. He was startled when he saw a pocket watch. Then, he became agitated. "Doctor, this is..." Jiang Cheng didn't allow him to continue. "It does look like Manly." The newspaper was dated 1st June 2006. It happened 14 years ago. Manly died in the past. No wonder the police couldn't find anything about him. In other words, every Dream Realm mission is real? The door sends us to the past to experience certain people's experiences? Fatty gasped. Jiang Cheng thought about it. It's possible, but this is just one incident. We've just experienced one nightmare to form any conclusions. Plus, there's one thing that you got wrong. Jiang Cheng folded the paper and told Fatty, even if the door really did send us back into the past, the experience we had was the tragedy experienced by the victims or another nightmare. Fatty thought about it and agreed with Jiang Cheng. Since people called the place the Dream Realm, each mission would put the players in life-threatening danger. Sister Nguyen and Manly had cleared a few missions, but they still died. "Doctor," Fatty's lips trembled, "do you remember the water puddles everywhere around the house?" Jiang Cheng nodded. The family died from drowning, so even after they became ghosts, they retained water. Fatty nodded with a pale face. Then, his eyes stared at the paper in Jiang Cheng's hands. Seeing Jiang Cheng's alert face, Fatty quickly explained, "Doctor, don't get me wrong. I just want to know where you got this newspaper." Jiang Cheng shrugged. "Chen Xiaoming gave it to me." "Her?" Fatty was instantly suspicious. "Doctor, I might not be as clever as you, but I'm not that dumb. She'd rather burn this than give it to you." Jiang Cheng pretended to sigh. "At first, I didn't get it too, but now that I think about it, she might have a slight Stockholm syndrome. So I think..." Fatty's heart dropped. "What do you think?" "I think she might have fallen for me," Jiang Cheng said helplessly. "Fatty..." Jiang Cheng waited for a while, but Fatty said nothing, so he turned to ask, "Why didn't you say anything?" Fatty took a deep breath. "Wait for me to take a drag of a cigarette to calm down first." Just as Jiang Cheng wanted to share his analysis of why Chen Xiaoming had fallen for him, his stomach suddenly grumbled. Fatty instantly became spirited. He asked if Jiang Cheng was hungry and offered to cook. Jiang Cheng thought about Fatty's cooking skills in the mission and nodded as he pointed at the kitchen. Fatty slipped away, leaving Jiang Cheng looking at the newspaper in interest. Jiang Cheng rarely cooked, so he only had frozen food and instant noodles. He bought them when they were on sale. Fatty worked hard for half an hour and finally produced 2 dishes. He fried the instant noodles. Jiang Cheng slurped down most of them instantly. "Doctor," Fatty took a few bites of the noodles. Do you normally live here alone? Jiang Cheng swept the rest of the food into his plate. Then, he wiped his lips. He nodded. Yes, and I have no interest in taking in a roommate. Fatty pouted and said, Doctor, don't be like that. Even though I'm not as clever or as handsome as you, I've done many jobs. I can help you somewhere. Jiang Cheng looked at the empty plates on the table and didn't answer. Fatty saw hope and became excited. He quickly said, Doctor, you don't need to make a decision now. Think about it. I'm very useful. We can talk about this tomorrow. Jiang Cheng worked his sore shoulders. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Fatty quickly cleaned up the table. The sound of water came from the kitchen. Doctor, you can go and sleep. I'll clean up everything and sleep on the couch. However, after Fatty was done with the dishes and came out of the kitchen, he saw Jiang Cheng sitting on the couch. He didn't seem to have moved. Doctor, Fatty asked, is there a problem? Jiang Cheng studied Fatty and raised his brows. You can sleep upstairs with me. I'm afraid of being alone. Fatty was startled. Then, he thought of something bad and instantly covered his butt. Doctor, I'm not that easy. No? Fatty thought about it and said firmly, of course. All right. Jiang Cheng stood up and shrugged casually. He moved to the stairs. When he was about to disappear upstairs, he turned around to say, you should be careful at night. Then, he pointed at the wall opposite. The door in my dream appeared that. And I was different from you. I didn't enter the door, but a giant hand came out of the door to pull me inside it. Then, he went upstairs. After Jiang Cheng left, Fatty sat on the couch and stared at the wall anxiously. He couldn't tell if Jiang Cheng was being real or not. He was too unpredictable, but in a way, he was reliable because he did lead him out of the dream realm alive. Once Fatty closed his eyes, he felt like the door Jiang Cheng mentioned would appear and the giant arm would reach out. Fatty stayed downstairs for less than 5 minutes before bouncing upstairs. Then, he ran into Jiang Cheng, who was leaning against the side of the stairs. It looked like he was waiting for him. Before Fatty could say anything, Jiang Cheng said, you'll take the living room. I'll sleep inside. Fatty looked behind Jiang Cheng. There was a door there that split up the small living room. The bedroom had to be inside. Doctor, Fatty said seriously, if you're scared of being alone, I can consider squeezing in with you. Jiang Cheng didn't feel like sleeping in bed. He looked at the ceiling. The scenes from the nightmare repeated in his mind. Fatty was outside the door. He suggested that Jiang Cheng keep the door open so that they could watch over each other. However, Jiang Cheng didn't think they needed that, so he rejected him. He not only closed the door, but also locked it too. Based on the earlier experience, Jiang Cheng naturally thought of the missing Hu Yan and Hu Yan's sister. Their disappearances probably had to do with the dream realm. Based on what Manly said, those who died in the dream realm would go missing in real life. It would happen without reason. Hu Yan's missing person report stated clearly that she was gone at midnight and wearing her light silk nightgown. Her husband, who was in bed with her, didn't even notice her gone. The middle-aged man in the first mission once asked the way to fully escape the dream realm. Manly said that was a stupid question. Once the iron door appeared in your dream, you couldn't escape until you died. He thought about it, and he became drowsy. Jiang Cheng didn't resist anything and slowly closed his eyes. The stamina exhausted in the dream realm returned to his body, but the mental exhaustion didn't recover. Jiang Cheng slept soundly. In his dream, he heard some banging sound like his neighbor was doing construction. Even the floor shook. He turned around and covered his head with the pillow and continued to sleep. In the end, the thing that woke him up was a knock on the door. Doctor, Fatty's loud voice came from outside the door. Are you awake? Jiang Cheng sat up and walked to open the door. The living room was empty. Fatty was gone. Jiang Cheng went down the stairs. The phone showed that it was 11 a.m. Jiang Cheng didn't expect to sleep until noon. His head was still dull from the sleep. Fatty poked his head out of the kitchen when he heard the sound. Doctor, Please sit first. The food will be ready soon. Jiang Cheng mumbled as he sat down on the couch. The experience last night flickered in his mind, causing him a headache. He looked up and realized someone had cleaned up his office. The shelf where he put the patient's file had shown signs of falling to the side, so Jiang Cheng wrapped it up with tape. The tape had been cleaned. The broken parts had been fixed with nails. Even the rust had been cleaned away. The messy wires on the ceiling and walls had been carefully arranged and pinned to where they should be. A folded ladder leaned against the wall. A piece of paper was squeezed in between, afraid that the rung of the ladder would dirty the wall. An old newspaper sat on the table. On the paper was a hammer, a pair of scissors, black electrical tape, and metallic nails. These should be the source of the banging. Doctor. Fatty's voice accompanied the sound of water out of the kitchen. Do you eat spicy food? I've made braised ribs. Sure. Jiang Cheng shouted, but don't put too much chili. I'm scared of breaking out 'cause I'm still in my puberty. Fatty paused before resuming. Jiang Cheng was leaning on the couch when the phone in his pocket vibrated. He took out it and answered it. Dr. Jiang, a man's voice came from the phone. It sounded very young. Are you at your office now? Yes. Then, I'll head over now, the man said happily. I'm just around. I'll be there in half an hour. Okay. Jiang Cheng nodded and hung up. Fatty walked out, holding the edge of the pot with some napkins. He rushed over and then quickly put the pot down. His fingers were red from the heat. When he saw Jiang Cheng look at him, he chuckled shyly. He said since he hadn't found a good cooking pot, he made do with a non-heat resistant pot. There's a kitchen cloth in the kitchen, Jiang Cheng said. Fatty was startled before he reacted that Jiang Cheng was referring to his hurt fingers. He couldn't help but be a little touched. His eyes watered. Dr. Jiang, thank. But Jiang Cheng looked at the napkin he used and pouted. Do you think the napkins are free? Regardless, Fatty's cooking was flawless. Jiang Cheng alone ate half the pot of ribs and 2 bowls of rice. If Fatty hadn't moved fast to grab the last piece of rib, he might not even know what his own cooking tastes like. So, what do you think? Fatty looked at Jiang Cheng with anticipation. Doctor, my cooking is not bad, right? I don't mean to brag, but I've once studied under the chef at Zuexian Lu. Jiang Cheng put down his bowl and wiped away the oil on his lips. So, he suddenly burped and continued, but since you've worked so hard, I would feel bad not eating more. The light in Fatty's eyes dimmed, like a child who didn't get the praise he wanted from the adult. He silently put away the pot and bowls and returned to the kitchen. The sound of water even managed to sound sad and despondent. Jiang Cheng looked at the table, which was so clean his reflections could be seen. He said, Fatty? The sound in the kitchen paused. Then, Fatty's voice came out. Doctor, did you call me? I have a client coming, Jiang Cheng said calmly. So, I need you to. Fatty sighed and replied, I know. I'll leave after I clean up everything. He paused. No matter what, thank you for saving me in the nightmare. Soon, Fatty walked out of the kitchen, wiping his hands. Jiang Cheng leaned on the couch. He opened his eyes when Fatty passed by. Fatty picked up the coat hanging on the rack and put it on. As he was about to say something, Jiang Cheng interrupted him. There's a supermarket nearby. They sell a lot of things, and they are cheap. Fatty frowned with confusion. I want to eat stew tonight, Jiang Cheng said shamelessly. Since stew takes time, you better come back soon. Fatty's confusion was replaced by appreciation. He quickly nodded. Don't worry, doctor. Fatty then disappeared like the wind. Jiang Cheng stood up and walked to the shelf. His fingers scanned most of them before pulling one out. The record belonged to Hu Yan. The document recorded Hu Yan's reaction when she was there. It was very detailed, including her habits of shaking her leg and looking in a certain direction. She was looking at the place where the door would appear. Hu Yan disappeared after she dreamed of a door. Based on what she said, her little sister experienced the same thing. This was similar to Jiang Cheng, but also different. At least Hu Yin and her sister could tell others about the dream regarding the door. The sister told Hu Yin on the phone, and Hu Yin told Jiang Cheng in person. In other words, they didn't enter the door when they dreamed of the door. It was different for Jiang Cheng and Fatty. They were in the dream realm once they dreamed of the door. When there was a knocking on the door, Jiang Cheng sat in the office. He flipped through another document and said without lifting his head, "Come in." The door opened, and a very young man came in. He was in an Armani suit, a gold-edged shirt, a blue and white striped tie, and a pair of brown leather shoes. They looked like they were handmade in Italy. "Dr. Jiang," the young man smiled kindly. He slightly bowed, and he radiated charm. Jiang Cheng slowly put down the file and then glanced at him. "Pai Yuan, is it still about your girlfriend?" "Yes." The man smiled. "This has troubled me so much. Why else would I be here, Dr. Jiang?"